Okay, we are continuing on with the seventh parak of Eruvin. We are in Daf Ayin Vav Amud Aleph. So now we're talking about when are we allowed to join together two different chatzirot or areas, and the question is how big can the window be in order for it to be considered to be a valid pathway between the two courtyards. Chalon shebein shtei chatzirot. Arba'a al arba'a b'toch asara ma'arvin shnayim. V'mratzu ma'arvin echad. So if we have for ourselves a window between two courtyards, so it has to be a square that's at least 4 by 4 in order to connect the two of them. Okay, so here's a nice window, and and it also has to be below 10 tefachim in order for it to be within 10 tefachim on the ground in order for it to be considered a valid passageway between the two. The top diagram. So if it's b'toch asara ma'arvin shnayim, if it's within 10, you can choose to make two eruvs. But also because it's valid, if it's a valid passageway, so now you can have one eruv joining the two courtyards as well. But if the window, again square window in this case, is less than 4 by 4, or it is above 10 tefachim, then it is not considered to be a valid passageway, and you need to make two eruvs. You cannot make one eruv unifying both courtyards. So the Gemara continues: Lema Kanan Stama Kerbishim Ben Gamliel Amar Kol Pacho Mi'arba Kalavudami. So the Gemara suggests that maybe the Mishnah is according to Rishim Ben Gamliel, who says that anything less than 4 amot is considered to be lavud. It's considered to be as if it's connected. So that's why it needs to be 4 by 4. Gemara responds, now, Afilu Tamer Karabanan Adkan Lopligi Rabanan Ale Derbishim Ben Gamliel El Ian Levudin Aval Inyan Pitcha Afilu Rabanan Modu Iga Arba Al Arba Chashiv Ilo Lo Chashiv. Now, maybe the Rabbanan would agree in this case, because they argue when you're talking about Levudin, meaning talking about gaps, right? But right, so is it a gap in the wall? But as far as the case of there being an opening, so they would agree that a 4 by 4 opening is considered to be a valid opening between two locations. 4 by 4, it's a good opening. If it's less than that, then it is not considered to be a valid opening. So back to the Mishnah, Pachot Me'arba Olamal Me'asara. It would not be considered to be a good passageway. So why not? Pshita, it's obvious. Kevan de Amar Arba al Arba b'toch asara. Memela ana yadana de Pachot Me'arba Olamal Me'asara lo. So I don't understand why you need to state this. Didn't we know from the first part of the Mishnah which said it needs to be at least 4 by 4 tefachim as well as 10 tefachim within 10 tefachim on the ground? Wouldn't you have obviously known that if either of the conditions aren't true, that it's no good? No, hakama shmalan. But this is what you would have. But this is what it teaches us instead. Rather, the reason why it had to teach us this again in the second part of the Mishnah is that when the whole window is above 10 tefachim, it's no good. But if it's partially within 10 tefachim, then that's sufficient, and that's when you choose to make either two separate eruvin or one united eruv. Tanina laha d'tan rabbanan hulu l'mala me'asara b'gato b'toch asara. So we're going to do the Mishnah. You can understand the Mishnah based on a Breita that says that if almost all of it is above 10, but part of it is within 10, or all of it is within 10 and part of it is above 10, like being almost all. You can make two eruvs, but if not, you can make one eruv. Yeah, when it says the word kulo here, doesn't mean entirely, because that can't be. There's kulo and mikzato, so it means almost everything. So here it's that if you have 10 above and some below. And if you have all of it above and almost all of it above and some of it below, you could make 2 or 1 air of your choice. So it's why do the reverse case? It's almost all below, but a little bit above. So why is that necessary? So right. So that is correct, and the Breita is simply using the giving the more straightforward case, even though he doesn't need to the other case. You're right; it's unnecessary, but simply it's a style of writing, and that's all it is. So now that we've dealt with our nice square, our nice square windows, now we're moving on to a little bit more complicated case. So Amar B'Yochanan Chalon Agul Tzarich Sheheb Behekefo Esrim V'Arba Tfachim V'Shnayim Umashu Mehem B'Toch Hasara She'im Yarbe'enu Nimsa Mashu B'Toch Hasara. Yochanan says that if you have a round window, then it would need to have a minimum circumference of 24 amot, 24 tfachim, and you need to have 2 and a little bit of those tfachim have to be in 10. If you were to square it, then you would find out that this is there'll be some amount of the square 4x4 in the center located within 10 tfachim of the ground. So michdi. So this seems to imply that anytime when there is a circumference of 3, then it has diameter of 1. So if that's the case, then wait, if the ratio is 3 to 1, then why wouldn't you say that it's enough for 12? No. So hani mile bagula, balbaribua be inantve. No, the measurements, the ratio between circumference and diameter is only relevant for when you are talking about a circle. But for when you're relating from the circumference to the diameter of the square, that's not the correct ratio. And so just in terms of the diagrams again. So here, the Yochanan said it's 24 all the way around. And the reason for that is because that way, if you have at least 2 1/4 tfachim, 2 and a little bit of tfachim of the circle below, that means that at least part of the square is exposed. So, and Rashi explains as follows that Sarich Kimar Be'inan Le Medlinin Le Mine Shnei Tfachim Mina Hekef Agul Shvek Karen LeKaren LeCholtzad Mistaman Hu Mukminan La Aribua. Right, so this way, when you're squaring it off, you end up losing a little bit. So this way, you'll end up being able to have again our 4x4 in the center over here, and it still ends up and it still ends up covering the correct area, and you have a tefach of each side over here, and then this 4 over here, and that's how this will work out. Okay, we will get so. Again, so we'll get into more details. That's that case. Okay, so now here. So now back to again. We're going to continue on some diagrams again. So this is you should have said that if the ratio is again, if the ratio between the circumference and the diameter is 1 to 3, then again 12 rounds should be enough. Why do you have 24? Something seems off here. So no, so the difference is that no, we're talking the difference between whether or not you're squaring around the circle or with it, right? Again, circles and squares are different ratios, so that's not really true, right? Again, because the diameter of the way across, right? So even though you may say it's 3 to 1 for a circle, that's not the case for a square. What is the case for the square? It says bin antvei. How much is that? So bichdei kama meruba yeter al agul. So how much more is a square than a circle? It's 1/4 more. So b'shitzar sagi. So then you should say, well, then it could be 16 in the perimeter of the square, and that should also be fine. That's diagram number 7. Shouldn't that be okay? So, right. So we're trying to figure this out. How's it supposed to work? So again, so why do you need more than that? So Hanimili begula did not speak migo ribu. No, that's when you're taking a circle out of the square, right? The circle circumscribed by a square again. So that's the circle is inside of the square, which is that's the diagram over here. But on the other hand, if you have a ribua did not make me go agula, no, but if you're taking a square out from the circle in the other direction, inantve, my taima mishum murisha de karnata, and why do you end up needing more than it just being, you know, a one third more? 1/3 of the original ends up being 1/4 at the end. So the answer is because of the extra corners, as you see here. As we end up, as it ends up getting bigger, when it's the difference between the two of them. Again, you get here's a big circle on the outside, and you take out this nice square, so therefore it ends up needing to be our 24 in the end. For more on how this works out, it's a fun geometry exercise, but whether or not everybody here would like to do go back to high school geometry, I'm uncertain of that. So we'll simply take it from these diagrams, and we'll leave it at that for now. So michdi kol amta beribua amta utre v'chumche balachson. So this implies that whenever you have any amma on the side of a square, it ends up being an amma and 2/5 on the diagonal. So b'shifzar nechi chumsha sagi. So then shouldn't it be enough to have 17 handbreadths minus a fifth? So how we get it to 24, right? So if we're saying that again with our diameter. Again, the diameter should be, if the diameter on one side is 4, so then if we scale that up, the diagonal should end up being 5 3/5. Again, so that's the approximation we're using for square root of 2. So why then do we need that end up being in total 16 4/5? Again, that's still not 24. So how are we going to get to 24 for the circumference? So Rabbi Yochanan Amar Ki Daini B'Kesari. Rabbi Yochanan was speaking with the opinion of the judges of the Dayanim from Caesarea. Amri Lakar Banda Kesari. And what is the opinion of the Chachamim of Caesarea? Amri Igula Migo Ribua Riva. A circle that is circumscribed in a square, it is smaller than it in circumference in the perimeter by 1/4, but ribua migo igula palga. But the difference between if you put a circle around, but if you're taking a circle out of a square, it is half. So you're right, it could have been the original 12, but again, it must be 50% larger to cover the whole thing. That's why using that approximation, that's why he ends up getting the much larger number of 24. Again, so again, because the ratio they're using is much larger, that's how you get the different amount. Again, so not that it perfectly lines up in terms of mathematics, but again, this is the approximation they're using, and we'll go with that. So now continuing on with the Mishnah, Acho mi arba al arba. Right, so if it's less than 4/4, or if it's above 10 handbreadths, then it's no good. So, again, 10 tvachim. So, Amar Rav Nachman, lo shanu ala chalon sheben shtei chatzirot. Rav Nachman says this is the case for when the window is between two different courtyards. Aval chalon sheben shnei batim, afilu lamala me'asar nami. So this is so as far as the limitation of being within 10 tvachim of the ground. That's only between two courtyards, between houses. It could be even above 10. Maybe it's in its entirety. If they want to make one eruv, then these two houses can make one eruv. My time of Beta command dami, because we say that every house is viewed as it's filled in. Again, in this diagram over here. So again, even if it is above 10, again, where the bed is, that's still a valid window. Again, that's above 10 tvachim. That's still that's still good. And as far as the other manners of entry, so we will that are listed here. We will get there in a bit. So, okay, 8 Rav or Rav Nachman. So now Rava contested this to Rav Nachman. So what was his issue? It says Echad li chalon sheben shtei chaserot, ve'echad li chalon sheben shtei batim, ve'echad li chalon sheben shtei aliot, ve'echad li chalon sheben shnei gagin, ve'echad li chalon sheben shnei chadarim, kulan arbal arba b'toch hasara. So Rava says, wait, but I was in a Tana right that whether you're talking about a window between courtyards, or a window between houses, or a window between two attics, or between two roofs, or between two different rooms within a house, we say that it has to be 4 by 4 tvachim, as well as being within 10 tvachim of the ground. So, arguma achatzera, no. So the Gemara says, really, we're explaining that Breita is referring only to chatzera. Ha echad liktani, but the Breita say they're all one and the same. How are we saying it's different? Arguma arbal arba. No, they meant that when they meant one and the same, they weren't referring to the. Didn't mean that it's one and the same in terms of being within 10 tvachim. The Breita meant that they're one and the same in regards to the minimum size of the window, being 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim. V'amine Rabbi Abba Meir Nachman. So then Rabbi Abba asked Rav Nachman as follows: Lul hapatuach min habayit lalia. If there's an aperture opening from one house in the ceiling to the upper story, again, if we have from upstairs to downstairs, do we need to have a permanent ladder fixed in or not? So, because we don't have the picture of that right here. So, okay, again, so again, say again here, the window and the floor over here, then above. Right, so this is our nice little opening between the roof, between the upper story and the lower story. Okay, as far as the other rooms, again, so we saw here that we had our courtyard wall, between the rooms, between attics, between roofs. Again, and then hay is the again between this room and that room within the same house. And okay, so now we're debating the again access point from the upper story, lower story. Do you need to have an actual ladder affixed in order for that to want to count? So key amrin on Beit command Mali. As we mentioned before, that we generally view a house as it's filled in, so height being irrelevant. Ani mili minatsa. Maybe that's only for when the hole is holes on the side of the wall. Aval be'emsa lo adil maloshna. Meaning maybe that's only if the window is to the side of the house. Maybe not if the window's in the middle of the house, or maybe there's no difference. So amarlai enotzarich. No, it's unnecessary. Really, the Chachamim hold that you don't even need a fixed ladder. Hasulam arai tzarich. You just need to have a window. You just need to have a ladder available to get through to the attic. Not that it has to actually be there the whole time. Amar Yosef bar Yomi, Amar Rav Nachman, echad sulam kavua, v'echad sulam arai eno tzarich. Rav Yosef bar Yomi said the name of Rav Nachman. You don't even need a permanent ladder nor a temporary ladder, as long as the opening is in the house. That is sufficient to allow you access between the two of them. Again, just to sum up what we covered today. So we covered different types of openings between courtyards, and so we started talking about the case. Again, it has to be 4 by 4 and above 10. And we moved on to after that. We started discussing the case of if it of being that was with a square window, then with a circular window. The question was how that measure. We had Rav Yochanan's opinion of it has to be 24 in circumference, which means to ensure that at least some of the inner square is below 10 tvachim. And then we dealt with some geometry in terms of the ratios between the circumference or perimeter versus diameter. But difference between circles and squares. And then we concluded that the reason why he got to 24 as opposed to, well, you may have thought either 12 or 16 or 16 and 4/5 is because he's using an approximation from the Zikanim or the Dayanim of Caesarea. And that's why he did it differently. And then we also discussed the question of where else these windows could be. Do we say that always that it has to always be below 10 shvachim for all of them, or is it just that it's 4? And we concluded that it only has to be 4 between each and everything. So again, one of the sort we had between houses was Kamal Yadamya. We say that it is considered to be as if it is all filled in. We also and that may apply whether it be within a house, whether it be between attics or between roofs. The only case where we don't say that is for a chatzer. And then we also want to discuss the case of an access point between the upper story and the lower story. Questions: do you need to have a fixed ladder between the two of them? And we said it came down to that there was again, there's machloket whether it needs to be fixed or not, and then or it could just be a temporary one. And then the final opinion was you don't even need to have a temporary one as long as the hole is sufficiently large. That is all